So I get to be the Tuesday night facilitator on these sessions. I'm delighted to be doing this on behalf of John Seacrest. I'll give a little bit of an update on, we've got a lot of people joining that's names I don't recognize today. So I'm super happy, but that means it's going to be just a few minutes. We had quite an uptake on Meetup for joining us this evening, and therefore we'll give everybody a few minutes to get in. My name is Elizabeth Krosnickel, and I'm actually working with John Seacrest on starting angel investor and entrepreneur strength. And so I'm happy to be talking to you all. I'll explain a little bit about our program. If you just found us on Meetup, you might not know about us. And because there's a few names I don't quite recognize. If you don't mind, just for information, if you feel like being found, you can put your name in the chat, and you can put your LinkedIn, which I'll do in just one sec. And we're happy to have the opportunity to network if you wish. Otherwise, you might just say where you're located. Have I got everybody on Pacific time, or some are joining us from a little bit later in the evening? Thank you. Tia. Ken is joining us after just 2 days on his new job. So this is kind of exciting. As a founder, we have to balance sometimes paid work and our passion work. And we're really lucky if we get to do them both in the same job. I'm curious about what It's Electric is, so we'll have to have that conversation with her.
Yeah, I'd be happy to tell you about it.
Good. So how we like to run these is we believe that the community is just as much a part of this event as us giving some didactic sort of material. And therefore, we will ask if people would like to introduce themselves, and I'll just go around the Zoom room down the list and have people just quickly introduce yourself and just tell what you're working on. It'll be helpful if you tell us whether or not you're an entrepreneur, which is, I think, most of you, or you're an investor. And we're going to be able to speak to both sides of the Gust equation on that. But it'd be helpful kind of to know which is which. So we have a few more, let's see, I'm just checking. I set a timer here for a few minutes after. So I want to be respectful of people's time. I always think that's a good way of starting something. I know that people will find their schedules adjust. And so while we had 35 people register for tonight, it doesn't always mean that everyone can join. And anybody who's been part of the Seattle Angel education programs knows that you can always see us on a YouTube channel. Afterwards, we record our education sessions, and I'll post the YouTube channel in here so that people can actually go to it. We're just doing a little organization of it at the moment. So it probably won't look exactly like this in the future, but that's just to make it easier for you to be able to find the content. And there we go. So that's it. I will be selectively choosing what it is that we put on based on the nature of our Gust profile discussions tonight. And so I really I don't think tonight will be the best one to watch everything. So I'm glad you're here in person. We do try and be really respectful when there's content that you don't want to be seen by others, but we do want to have that opportunity to have a discussion. So happy that you're here. And I know we're going to be joined by a few other people. So here we go. I'm going to record it though. And as I said, I'll be very selective in our editing here about what material is actually put out. So we can always talk about that, what that actually means. Just letting the rest of the people in. So I'll start from the top. Hi, my name is Elizabeth Crossnickel, and I am sitting in for John Seacrest, who is actually in Europe. He's been there for the last month and a half, I think, talking to some investors and entrepreneurs in Europe just about how he can be helping our partners in other countries to be developing education programs, mostly geared towards angel investors. So we run an angel investor accelerator program. And as part of that, it's really a combination of trying to get investors more familiar with what it takes to be investing in early startups. What does that mean when you're an early angel investor? So it could be people who have just come for the first time to be questioning what it is that angel investing is about, or it could be people who have done a number of rounds and of investment in a variety of different companies. The other place that we actually provide education is for entrepreneurs. And we like to say we're getting you investor ready. And so as part of that, we're looking to make sure that the information that you're actually presenting is comprehensive and will explain to an investor the important components. For example, have you clearly thought about who your customers are? Have you thought about who's paying for your product or services? Have you thought about if it's a regulatory environment that you're going to be working in, who actually is regulating it? What is your business model? All of those components. And then we also assist in packaging it so that you actually can share it with others. This is all part of a series of workshops that we run. And then the second component of activities that we do is we do an investor entrepreneur match. It's a competition based on business plan, Gust profile, and sharing discussions with investors. And we take a number of companies, we admit them as a cohort of investors, a cohort of entrepreneurs, and then we do deal screening and selection to get down to all companies. This time we've chosen to do 60 and to then select 24, 12, 6, and then we have a showcase of a demo day where the 6 finalists present. The finalists who present then get the opportunity to actually, if the investors, they'll be pooling their money together to make one investment in one company. So the investors come onto the cap table as a single investment. So that's the second part of the program. Our Seattle Angel Conference, which is geographically titled, but really is geographically diverse. It will actually be starting in August on the 30th. The investors will meet, and I can tell you a little bit more about if you wanted to apply to that, what that might look like. So here's our investors coming on in to the meeting, and delighted to have them here. How we're going to run this is the first 10 minutes, we're going to get you to quickly introduce yourselves, because if you make a network of other people, then you can always call and say, could you, we might be working on the same space, or could you make a suggestion on who you approached for as an investor for funds? So that is an opportunity to network. The second thing is it gives us an opportunity just to understand whether or not you're an investor or an entrepreneur. For the ones who came early, I already mentioned that. And so just a sentence or two about what you hope to get out of tonight so we can make sure that we're successful for you. I will then say we're going to go to sharing Gust profiles and tips on how to do a Gust profile. We'll show from the startup's perspective and the investor's perspective, so you can see what each sides of the table see. And then we'll make some suggestions on things that might be stronger. Then we're going to break out a little bit into, just depending on how many people we are, where if you decide you want to share your Gust profile with an investor, that you have the opportunity to do so. So once again, for people who didn't actually hear what that word is about, Seattle Angel Conference is our programs that John Seacrest runs from Mossy Ventures Productions. And these programs are Seattle Angel Conference, which I said earlier is not geographically specific. It's North America wide. APIS Health Angels, which is more focused on health and life sciences, and the Transatlantic Angel program, which is actually fostering American and European investors and entrepreneurs working together to look at deal flow. So just expanding your portfolio. We're delighted to be here. And so what we're going to do is actually jump really quickly into having an opportunity to look at what does Gust do. So there are many different tools that you can actually provide your information about your company to an investor. We just happen to use Gust as it is one that's easily available and usable, and it's particularly easy for a group to be sharing feedback on. When I say a group, I mean investors. So investors can actually look at a list of a number of companies there. They can toggle back and forth between the companies and understand what the value proposition, the business model is, and watch a video about a short video, or even sometimes longer. But for our program, we're asking for a short one so the investors can do some screening early. So what we're going to do now is actually Ali has very kindly offered to share his Gust profile. I'll let him tell you a little bit about his company, but not very much, because we're actually going to walk through it as if we are new to what Harvest does and see how the information is displayed. So we'll learn a little bit of the tricks of how to actually load stuff onto Gust, but more so we're looking at how can you make a compelling pitch on Gust. So Ali and I practiced a little bit beforehand. He's done this before, so he's set to go. So we're going to let him share his screen right now.
All right, thank you. I am going to be the guinea pig. There we go. And that should be seen by everyone now.
So we're seeing your application here. This is the first program that you've applied to. If you actually had applied to a number of programs, you would see them all listed here. And we're seeing the profile. We're going to see your company profile either by clicking here profile or clicking on the previous screen company profile. You can get to this two ways. How many people?
That profile he just clicked on is his personal profile, and now we're over to
the first one I
right?
clicked on was my personal profile, and then part of that I have the company Harvest. I'm not quite sure how to get to just the company. Is it just by clicking on this?
Just right over here on that left where it says company profile. If you're on the home screen and you click directly on company profile, you'll come straight here. See,
there you go. I'm learning as I go.
Yeah. So how many people actually have a Gust profile? Or maybe I should say, how many people do not have a Gust profile? So Stefan, you started to answer me. How many people do not have a Gust profile? Because I'm assuming most of you do, and we're looking at tuning it up. So there's not anybody on here who does not have a Gust profile. Is that what I'm saying correctly? Okay, good to know. So you already are familiar with this screen. How many have actually just developed your Gust profile and not shared it with anybody yet? So who has not actually gone public with your profile? Nick, we're going to see yours soon though. In fact, I think you were asking for a mentor. It's probably going to be me, so.
Elizabeth, just to clarify, there's a difference between publishing your profile within the Gust ecosystem and sharing it with individual groups. So for example, BrainSpace never published ours with the publish button, but we've shared it with a number of different groups when we've applied with those groups. So you do have a little bit of control over how you manage that.
And that's an important distinction, Caitlin. So we're going to play off each other because we want you to be aware that you can apply to programs and share your individual information once you put it. Sorry. Yes, June can. Oh, there you go. You've muted yourself.
Sorry.
That's okay. So if you decide that you want it to go public, then anybody who's on the Gust network will be able to see it. But if you decide that it only is private, then you'll actually be sharing it just with the people that you've allowed to have access through either individuals, but most often through a program. Okay, so one of the things that we'll start here is that I'd like to just, if you look visually at Ali's page, you'll see it's got some nice color in terms of being attractive. That it's more the content that we're interested in, but you will find that visually pleasing is important. You'll also notice right away that he actually has a video here, and that is an option.
Yeah, I'm gonna go take it some.
That is an option that you can actually, whether or not you put this in, but a lot of programs like to see that because it makes it easier. You can put your videos on your home web page, but putting a short video on here, Ali's is very sophisticated. Some of the other ones that we have seen are not very sophisticated, but he knew he was showing it with you, and he's a little bit further along in developing this. So Ali, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. So as you've been probably reading here, is we are a company that works with indoor growers, and that usually includes folks who are doing greenhouses, but most of our growers in our network are hydroponic indoor growers that are sunless using LED lights. And we've fractionalized the capacity of a shipping container or a vertical farm and put it on the market to be booked. Like, as I say, the Airbnb to be booked for food service and restaurant chains, large bulk produce. So I have here, done my profile. I have added, and I'm assuming, Elizabeth, you just want me to go through here?
Yes, please.
Yep.
Yes,
okay.
please.
All right. So I have a little video. I've turned off the audio so I can talk over it. I put in all, the different pieces that have been asked by the, it asks you a whole bunch of questions. So I filled it in. And I've also uploaded our deck that we have that we're using for investment, and which, this is really good to be able to, I guess, for people to download. It looks like it gives you the ability to download as well. And gone through, answering, oops, I'm not sure why that happened. There we go. Our management team, what we're trying to solve, which is lack of all year availability, frequent price spikes, and spoilage. So just talking about our target market, business model, and whatnot. Different documents we put in here as well. We have we're raising a fund right now. So I have our seed memo and this example of what the type of customers since we're two-sided, what kind of buyers we actually work with. Hopefully that's a good overview.
That's great, actually. Now, what I'd like to do is just a couple of things to pick up here. So when I am an investor and I'm looking at this, one of the things that I'm going to see immediately is this section to the left about what stage Ali is, or any of the companies are in. So you can pick different stages. And so this is product and market. Many of you may be at the early stages that you're actually doing an MVP. That might be your selection here. You may actually already have sales. And so you may actually be picking different stages here. The second thing is you are obliged a little bit to pick an industry here. And if you pick an industry, thanks Ali for selecting it. You can put health or life sciences or retail and distribution, a variety of wide industries here. You can pick your location of where it is that you are seated. You actually are forced to make a geographic location. So it may be wherever your head office is here. We do take companies that, people load companies all the time on Gust that actually operate in different currencies. So if the standard one on the European companies that we've been seeing has still been to go to USD for some consistency, but you may pick the currency of your choice. Ali's noted that they were founded in April 2021. And so if I'm an investor, I might look and say, oh, well, then they've been operating for a little while. And that you can see why that explains some of the quality of the work that they have and the difference, how far along they are with the product in the market. And when people join programs, it's not always necessary to be a C Corp, but if you're going out to investors for money, which is what this profile is often used for, then you really need to be a C Corp or moving towards that. I have plans to move towards that.
Yeah, so be ready. If that's not the case today, it's one of the first questions you're going to get asked is that in progress and is that happening?
I'm going to jump in and ask, we've got Dennis and Austin here when you're an investor, the kinds of things you're looking at just on this front page for us. Did you drop? Okay.
One thing I would add, one thing I would add, and it's not necessarily tied to the front page, but I would say is that there are a lot of stars to review as an investor. And so many investors won't look at the whole, everything. And so what I personally prioritize was just looking at the pitch decks. And so making sure that they're very complete and thorough. And, this might not be true for every investor. But my guess is that most investors are not looking at the whole part of, your profile and probably just focusing on the pitch deck. So make those details. Go for it.
Go ahead. I thought you were done. I was just going to add on to what you were saying. Keep going.
Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate, I guess, there are different types of pitch decks. There's presentation decks, reading decks, a million other decks with different names. And making sure that your pitch deck is a reading deck, I would say, which means detailed, has words, numbers on it, something that investors can look at without anyone speaking. So, as complete as possible.
Yeah. So think about when we're at the first stage, we're looking at around 100 companies and we have to decide to get down to 24. And so at that stage, you're going through a lot of companies all at once. And so the reality is a lot of people, they're looking at this overview page and they're looking at the pitch deck, right? Those are kind of the two. And then if it's looking exciting, then they may look at some of those other content. And so it's helpful for it to be there eventually. But if what's on that overview and pitch deck aren't compelling, it can be hard to stand out if you're trying to get through 100 in a week. So.
And that's the same for everybody who is going to apply to any program. Usually it's very, there's a group of people. And so the investment group is actually doing deal screening. So whether or not you're applying to the Seattle Angel Conference program or any of the other programs that you can do through Gust, you should be aware that just like any presentation to investors, you're trying to stand out amongst the other ones that are going on. The one thing I would like to point out is that if you haven't experimented with this, the investors often can do a download a one-pager. And if I'm going to pull up a one-pager here in just a sec so that you can actually have a look at, thank you for doing yours so quickly. So sometimes as the investors are going through this, they will actually have this one-pager to have a quick look at in addition to the slide deck, but just as a memory guide. And often it has notes on it. as people are going through their discussions. So that's just helpful if you print off your own so that you can see what it looks like and see whether or not it's representative of the things that you want from your pitch deck to be apparent. It's really clear that you could see there, you can't get a lot of text in those boxes. And so it's okay to have not a prose style of writing. Instead, you're more packing in information that is cogent rather than trying to tell a real narrative story here.
One thing I'll recommend is to use Grammarly to really take what you write so that it has proper grammar and it catches a lot of little errors that you might not even know of, but folks that are very detail oriented will catch on to it. So spend the time to use a tool that does that kind of scrubbing.
Okay, so the one other thing that, Ali, that's really important because for people who are particular about that, it does actually influence the quality, which says whether or not you were hasty in putting this together. And so for people who are applying to some programs, for ours, for example, you actually we'll ask you to make your application and load your Gust deck, but we'll tell you over the next little bit, please feel free to keep editing it and refining it and listening to investors talk about it so that you can put more information into it. And then we actually say a cutoff date. So the investors will be released to look at all of the profiles as of a certain date. So that is just a bit of a clue to keep an eye on what that date is, because you may have actually been sort of tinkering, but not really ready for everybody to see it. And so it's always nice to know what date the investors are going to be reviewing. The other thing that some companies don't always do is actually take advantage of the social presence there. So LinkedIn, if you've got a LinkedIn profile, sometimes we can see on here where you're pasting about thought leadership articles, or you are people are giving you kudos for some work that you've done, or some other we're seeing what other social media presence that you have. So take advantage to actually using those other ones. And since not every investor will click on those things, but it's handy to actually have them there. Caitlin, how often when you were reviewing I'm going to ask some questions. How often when you were reviewing the APIS profiles, did you look at the social presence?
So for me, it really depends on if it's a B2B or B2C company. So for example, in life science, you actually can't be advertising too early. So sometimes, you can, like Elizabeth said, you can still do some thought leadership type, you can still share publications, right? There's still things you can do, but I wasn't as worried about that. But if you're telling me that you're a direct to consumer play and you don't have a social presence, that's more of a concern to me. So I think from my perspective, I clicked on it. If somebody said they were selling directly to consumer, then I wanted to see kind of how that was going.
Austin, what about you?
I don't remember really looking at the social links when I went through it last time.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm sure investors do. And I guess it makes, I agree with Caitlin's thoughts on the B2C versus, more of the earlier stage stuff where there might not be a presence.
Dennis, sorry, Austin.
Oh, I'm just reiterating. I at least on the initial rounds, kind of just looked at the pitch decks and then got more detailed as the rounds went on.
Okay. And Dennis, any thoughts on your approach?
So I don't really actually check into the social presence. Mostly I'm actually looking into the profile, but essentially most investors doesn't have much time to look through all the details, and particularly at a very early stage of the conference. So typically what we do is that for me, I'm looking over the part showing up when I do a mouse over to the name of the company. And that is what I was typically will go through at the very beginning. And that actually gives me the very good impression what the company is. But I just, I'm not sure how does that being done from the company side. But that is actually what I spend most of the time at the very beginning of the conference. So that actually gives a pretty good indication how this company being presented in a very short paragraph. So I think that's something I look at mostly when I get started on a conference.
And June's asking us to explain that again. So could I just check, June, was it that you were asking about Grammarly or the process?
The last gentleman who talked about, he said he just mouses over and looks at something.
Yeah.
And I missed that. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Good for you to ask.
So, yeah. So when I look into the profiles, typically I got the list, right? So I went through the list. There's 60 of you, and I'm just trying to see that what's the the essence of the company, and that's showing up a summary page. So I guess the question is that I'm not sure how does that being done on the company side to put that things together.
Elizabeth, how does that come? What profile that is Dennis talking about that he just kind of...
Right. I don't have that connection here. I'm not sure.
Is that something that SAC provides, or is it...
Where's
that being pulled from? Is that a spreadsheet?
Yep.
Yeah, what we do is, and any other, I'm trying to, I can speak specifically about our program, but I have been involved in other programs, so I can speak about other programs as well. What often happens is that investors have access to all of the individual profiles, just like this, and they go screening through. And I'll show you quickly my screen in just a sec. And then what happens then is that we download all of the Gust profile information into a spreadsheet. And so therefore investors can actually sort on characteristics that are important to them. They might like specific industries. They might like, every investor has a thesis of something that they're particularly interested in. And they might like slightly later stage companies. Now they're involved in an angel conference. So when it says later stage, that window is still very on the earlier stage. But so then they may have a fondness for health, or they may have a fondness for for companies who've been around for a little bit longer, or they may be more interested in seeing what new, very, very new companies have actually put out into this space. So there's a variety of ways you can sort this. I am actually going to share now my screen and my deal list. For some of you who have actually applied to the Seattle Angel Conference, you're actually will already be on here, but I'm not going to be sharing all of the details. So I'll just share my screen right now. And this is what the investors see. So here's the conference. I actually am an organizer. So firstly, I could just check. You can see my Seattle Angel Conference page.
Yes.
Yes. So this is, if you submit your company, this is everybody saw for an application. If you've not submitted it, you can still do that. Our group charges $100. Some other groups are free. Some other groups charge, I know, $250, $300, just depending on what the angel group chooses to do. Our webpage is here, so you can see a little bit about how things run. And then I'll just come back up. And so you're seeing me at the moment in my administrative role. Now you're going to see me in a deal list role, which is what investors see. I could also show, I'm a company founder, so I could also show you my company role. So here are the companies that have actually applied for us. And when Dennis said that he actually screens over and sees the profile, this is the profile that he was actually referencing. So what pops up here, and I'm just taking, well, actually I should do harvest for some consistency.
One more S, yeah.
Yeah, and it should load right now. Sorry, I've got a new computer. I just haven't quite that. So if we do harvest here, we'll actually see where the Airbnb. So it's a little bit about where they're located. The description that was in the front chunk of Ali's portion there. Any deal leads, if they are, who the entrepreneur is, how to contact the entrepreneur. You didn't see that on the other page. So if we have any questions, we can reach out to you by whatever means of mechanism you put in here. That when it was founded, whether or not they have raised any money and what they're seeking. And this pre-money stands for pre-money valuation. Now, I'm just going to once again just quickly ask a question of our audience. How many people have actually seen this side of the view as I'm just pulling you out so I can have a look at you too. How many people have actually seen this side of the investor sort of deal room flow? Yeah, a few. Thanks, Son. Okay. So that's so when an investor starts to get to see something, that's what the information that they're doing. And then when we actually, and I'm just going to move you back over here so you're not so in the way. So what we're showing now is actually, there are a variety of companies that are activated. We actually, as the Seattle Angel Conference, have about 1,500 companies that have actually applied to our program and come to our education sessions over a period of time. Some of them stay with us for a while and keep coming back into different activities that we do, and others bow out. So I'm going to stop sharing that screen. But while I'm here, does anyone have any questions? So now I, as an administrator, can actually download all of this into, as I said, an Excel spreadsheet, which is also given to our investors for reviewing. But if I showed you this spreadsheet and you realized how many characters are on an Excel spreadsheet, you'd realize it's pretty small. So that first sentence or two that you put up here, I want to tell you how powerful it is, right?
And that really comes back to Dennis's point, because although we talk about kind of what do we look at originally, in the conversations with all the other angels, someone will mention a company. And that was a fantastic point, that's exactly what we all do, is we all go hover over that one and go, oh yeah, okay, that's who they were. And so if those first couple sentences aren't an immediate trigger of what your company is, it can be hard for people to follow the conversation. So
just a quick question. When filling out Gust, I essentially just went through the prompts and filled out one section after another. The summary that you just showed, that is the first thing that would come up. What section is that in under Gust, so that I can just make sure that if I need to, I can edit that accordingly?
Yeah.
So when you go to your company profile, it's going to be what shows up as kind of the home screen of your company profile. I think it's like 300 characters or something, but it's right there above where you can put in the video. It's right at the top there. Yeah, maybe.
Sure. Okay.
So I'm just going to show you here. Once again on harvests. So that paragraph right here,
right,
in the overview, is the paragraph that shows up.
Thank you.
These, obviously, when we download the files, we don't get the pitch deck, but we do get the team. So if we're looking at the team, in this case, it's just Ali, but he has a team. And so it's sometimes is often useful to actually put the other people who are working with you. We do like sole founders, but we do, some people actually are more inclined to have someone who has a backup member to be working with, so that we know that there are many roles in an initial startup. And so oftentimes, if you have a team, it's useful to put it in here. Now, let me do some questions on that. So how many of you are sole founders?
Well, actually, can you point out where the team input category is? I don't seem to see that on my interface.
Sorry, where are you actually? I can come back to there. Yep.
I'm sorry, just looking for where we input team.
So if you go across your if you're in your, I can go to my own profile as an entrepreneur, and I actually don't have much on mine, and so Caitlin will scold me and say, how come you're not working as far along in this as you should be? But if I look on my company profile here,
okay.
So there's my overview. I have not, I have my team right here. Here's my advisors who are working with me. And if I want to add another person on my team or edit, you can see I click on these two things.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't know where that was.
Yeah, no, happy to actually, this is why I have mine up here too, because I actually add people at the same time on certain, but I can add my additional founder. So here's my screen. And I'm adding someone's name, their position, their experience, their email, and I could allow them to manage my company profile. And then adding this onto here is one of the things that's useful to do is Gust actually does a little bit of, your team is one of the most influential factors. Remember to split equity before applying for funding. So divide ownership fairly. So they offer little tool prompts, one of which is valuation, which I was going to get to before we actually finish. But here's a tip for co-founder equity split. Has everybody thought about their equity that they're sharing? Yep. So that sounds good. And we do workshops on sharing equity. So if anyone needs a little refresher on what kinds of things you might consider for that. But this
lots of opinions on that subject.
There certainly are. And this workshop is not really intended to be that, but I just wanted you to know that Gust actually has tutorials that on how to fill out a Gust profile, and we can find them by just going to Gust tutorials. Why Elizabeth, we didn't just
the team member thing has come up quite a few times. I'm not sure that they really have it well covered in the workflow. So that may be something to provide some feedback next time you're talking with Gust, but we had that problem quite a bit where people were missing the team section when they were filling it out the first time. So I don't know if maybe when it steps you through the first time you're creating it, if it's missing some of that, but.
And I did this a little while ago, so I could do a new profile to see where that glitch is for adding the team. But if someone else has had that experience, that's good.
I wanted to say something. I don't mean to interrupt you. On the one pager on the left side, I believe there are some parsing issues. Like if you put the URL in the profile, or even on the team, the way it parses it, sometimes it's not proper. So I don't know if do investors look at these one pagers quite heavily, or it has.
So they're used for reference, but things like parsing issues, I wouldn't worry about. We know that Gust sometimes does funny things on that. So it's more just a reference when we're talking about a company to be able to remind ourselves of like, okay, wait, who is this? What was the situation? That sort of thing.
Yeah, it makes it a little bit hard to read sometimes, you know what I mean? It's not just the cosmetic issue. It's more that it's just.
So I have actually rearranged my paragraph so that it didn't end up cutting a URL in the middle of a line, so that it didn't have that issue in order to make it work. So it depends on how much time you want to spend. I mean, the converse of that is that actually sometimes you can spend too much time getting it perfect and not enough time talking to enough different people. So lots of different philosophies on that as well. But
I'm saying the parser needs to be fixed, not what we put in.
Sure. And if you want to submit a ticket to Gust, I'm sure you can add that to the list. We have no control over that from a system standpoint.
Yes, but actually we do work with Gust enough that I will share that particular feedback to Ryan and Keenan so that they actually get that news.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I wasn't able to see who exactly was speaking when I had my screen open. So okay, so then
I think Christopher had his hand up.
I have a question, if that's okay.
Yeah, please go ahead, Christopher. This is really it's for you. So this is the whole goal. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so sorry, I'm taking care of the kids right now, but at this point, I already applied and submitted my application. Is there any use in redoing my Gust profile or updating it, or has that already been done?
So Christopher, if you applied to SAC, then we will not, the investors will not see your profile until August the 30th.
Okay.
So if you have things you want to do and change, go ahead.
Okay. And is it better to focus on a broad scale what you're hoping to do as a company? For instance, on the main profile page, or is it better to like narrow down on a specific product?
If I said I was setting out to solve cardiac reperfusion injury, then someone might say that's a pretty broad topic. How are you going to do that? And so I instead have a specific description of what we're trying to do that narrows it down so people can say, oh, you're actually using a drug that's already on the market and you've got a device that's going to, so you're a drug device combination. So it narrows it down a little bit. We do want to see that if it's very narrow, it doesn't sound like it's going to be a worthwhile, perhaps a worthwhile investment for investors who are looking for a return on their capital. And so sometimes the way to do it is to actually say, here's our beachhead entry. And then we're looking for broader, we have a broader market fit that, and then describe that. Does that actually help answer your question, Christopher?
Yeah, it definitely does.
Okay, so Badri, do you have a question?
We've already uploaded a video and I think it was too long.
Yeah. Sorry, Badri, just hold a sec while I finish Chris's. You uploaded a video, you think it's too long. We're asking for a 1-minute video. If it's longer than 2, we'll ask you to take it down.
Thank you so much.
Badri?
Yeah, quick question. So how professional should the video production be? Is it something that you could do at home, or I'm just curious, like how much sort of importance is given to the video? Is that the first foray of the marketing profile? Should that be like the best in the business, or can this be a, like a video taken at your house? Or?
It's we've often actually had one person filming themselves on Zoom talking. And then they might have, example, okay, if I was doing a container, I might hold it up at this point in time and say, my container is going to be this big, and it's intended to have this. And then they set it down. And that is the extent of, or people who actually have it looks like this. It functions like this. It may not look like this. And so you may actually have that kind of a prototype. For example, I have I rearranged my office, but I have an aerosolizer, which actually is to disperse my drug. But if I showed it to you, you'd say, wait a minute, that could not possibly do what you wanted to do. But I could say, we have a prototype, and the prototype is going to be having this kind of a function. Okay. Does that help, Audrey?
Yeah, it does. And you said that the video should be preferably less than a minute. Is that what you said?
Well, we aim for a 1-minute video, because when you actually get, if you're participating in the Seattle Angel Conference or any of the other ones that Mossy Ventures runs, then the first thing that we actually do is have you come to a meeting and give your 1-minute pitch. Okay. And when you give your 1-minute pitch, we time it. So that's why it's sometimes helpful to have your video sort of be about the same timing. And I always say, start with 10 minutes and figure out what are these super important things to do, and then get down to 5, 3, and 1, because then as you're doing it, you're crossing out, where are the extra words that I don't need to be? What is the key point I want people to hear about? I'm going to turn to Dennis, who's nodding his head, and say, tell me a little bit more about what you're looking for, Dennis.
Yeah, so like I say, the investor attention is limited. So typically what we want to do is that within a very short period of time, give certain keywords and give away certain information and draw the attention from the investor, right? We have looking into so many companies with limited time. So you really want to get that attention focused onto your company. And don't try to please everybody. You just have to find your match, whatever actually subscribe to your story. So don't be afraid to be very strong about your opinion. I'm not saying that is right. I'm just saying that you don't have to please everybody. So I think to be truthful to what you are trying to deliver with your company or your product or service, I think that's actually key, either in the video or in the presentation. So the reason to shorten that into 1 minute, like Elizabeth say, is a good practice, and also it asks you to keep focus on what you are trying to deliver within a very short period of time. I think that's the whole concept about the elevator pitch.
Right. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah.
Does that answer your question, Badri?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely.
Okay, good.
This is, yeah.
So if anyone needs help with their videos, Ali is actually offering to give some assistance. Ali is the Harvest entrepreneur. We also will run a workshop on just practicing your presentation for people. This one was focused on Gust, but if you're needing some assistance on how to get up and do your 1 minute presentation, we'll be actually working on that and giving feedback. June, you have a question I'd like to ask you to go next, and then I want to turn it to Austin.
Okay, I've heard it mentioned twice, I think, that the first line in your profile is really important to catch the attention. And I was wondering if the guests could help us, give us a couple of examples of first lines that attracted their attention, that got them to invest in a company.
Okay. Does anyone want to throw one forward?
I'll say, I don't have a great example off the top of my head here, but I would say it was less about like catching an investor's attention and more about like framing it in a way where an investor like understands your business. And so generally the model of like X for Y is generally a good pattern. So, you know, Tinder for something or Uber for something usually is makes things easier for investors to understand. That's the feedback I'd give.
Thank you.
But don't force it. If there isn't an obvious X for Y, it's worse that you're kind of trying to force that and then it doesn't really translate. So yeah, it's simple to understand your business in a sentence, like Austin's saying, but that can sometimes be difficult to do. So sometimes it ends up too cheesy if you're forcing something that doesn't really fit.
I agree with you. I'd just like to say that our last winner, actually, her slogan was "Make Beer Better." They were doing QC for fermented drug products. And so making beer better right away said they had something to do with the process of doing that. And so that I just put in.
Light is perfect.
Yeah, that I just put in that line in there, the GeekWire write-up, so you could actually read a little bit about how that recent founder actually articulated that. Mike,
appreciate it.
Michael.
All right, take care.
I'm just muting, sorry. Michael, can you actually just talk about Dana Seether Robinson, who has actually come along with us previously on Pitch for Impact? She's using Yuli, so tell us a little bit about that.
Dana's awesome and pitch coached me some. I'm not a good pitcher, but she's got me using this Yuli app, which I haven't figured out how to upload my pitch onto Gust yet. But so you got an airplane video on there, so I could pay you your $100. But anyway, it is pretty helpful, and it's got some AI that keeps track of your words and whatnot, and it's real easy to use, really. I'm just not the computer guy to upload it.
Okay.
I actually, real quick here, I have a buddy working at Udemy, and the way he describes it, speaking of one-liners, is Duolingo for public speaking.
Okay, thanks very much for putting that reference in there. Anybody, when I said earlier, we're going to be community. So Chris has Christopher is also offering to help you in terms of uploading your videos. Does anyone actually have any other pitch coach? Story Fruition is another company around here that has a pitch coach, and Melissa Reeves is very helpful for shortening the story. She also helps people in terms of public speaking, just to make sure that they are not having lots of ums and ahs